by helping students access, afford, and complete a post-secondary degree or credential. We have a partnership with Atlanta Public Schools that we are in our 6th academic year with this partnership. And then we also have partnerships with colleges and universities, including Atlanta Technical College and some 2-year institutions across the state of Georgia. And what we do through partnerships, we also are partnering with the College Advising Corps and other nonprofits. And our model is to build these coalitions and structured partnerships to help students at every step of the post-secondary journey. Everything from helping students get to college, to pay for college, to then succeed in college. And we've learned a lot along the way. So I'm really happy to be here and to share some of the things that we're talking about today in light of COVID and its impact on post-secondary education.
Thanks so much, Tina. Yarbrah, would you share more about College Advising Corps?
Sure, and thank you also, Daniela, for the invitation. Excited to be here with you all today. Also excited to see Tina. She and I used to see each other so much in person, and because of COVID, we only see each other on webinar experiences, so I'm grateful for that too. But I'm Yarbrah Peeples, like Daniela said. I'm the Senior Director of Programs East for the College Advising Corps. The College Advising Corps, also known as CAC, is a national college access nonprofit that exists to increase the number of low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented high school students who enter and complete college. And we define college as 2-year, 4-year, and technical college. CAC supports students nationwide through 2 innovative program models. We have an in-school model, which we have deployed here in Georgia, and we place well-trained recent college graduates from in Georgia. It's our 2 university partners, UGA and Georgia State, and they serve as full-time college advisors in high schools. Across the country, we have over 30 university partners, and we have about 800 advisors that are working in high schools all around the country. Our advisors work alongside counselors. They cannot replace them, and their primary focus is to support students through the application and financial aid process. We also have a virtual model that leverages technology to connect well-trained recent college graduates with students across the country, and we do that in some of our other markets. And there are a few students in Georgia that are being served through our virtual programs as well. So I'm happy to be here. Can't wait to dig into some of these questions and share a little bit more about what we've been experiencing nationwide and particularly in Georgia.
Thanks so much, Yarbrah. Really appreciate that. And with that, we'll kind of kick it off with you first. Could you kind of share what the year's been like for so many of your advisors that are in schools that really rely on having one-on-one meetings with students to talk about what post-secondary looks like and all those steps that you kind of need to get there? So what kind of has been the year like for your advisors?
Okay. Well, so when I talk about the year and I think about 2020, I think about the initial March pivot that happened. And so when I think about that, I'm extraordinarily proud of advisors and particularly the advisors in Atlanta for the extraordinary way they were able to pivot so quickly in March. We actually got a call from our CEO at the national office maybe 2 or 3 days before school was officially canceled, saying, I think we're going to need to pull all of the advisors out of school. We had a day or 2 to get all of our program directors together to have a call to say, okay, ask advisors to pull everything they can. Let's get telephone numbers for students and parents. We're going to have to do this from home. We're going to have to pull everything that we have and we can do together in order to make this work. As I shared before, we also have a virtual model. That came in handy because our virtual advising team had a lot of tools and resources to be able to provide direction for our in-school advisors on what virtual advising looked like. And so for us, virtual advising has always, on that side of house, been things like Zoom and WebEx, telephone, email, and even, telephone, email, and phone occasionally. And so we had our team develop a virtual advising guide. We started training advisors virtually on what to do. And then the advisors were able to begin to do outreach to their students. In Atlanta, it was so extraordinary. And I say that, and I mean that because, and our outcomes demonstrate that, largely because of partnerships. And so that's with both Achieve Atlanta and APS in particular. And that's because our group was able to come together to think through what was needed in order to have success. And the school district was so very kind. And I say that because there were so many things that they could have been thinking about, and this remained one of the priorities. And so what they did for us was really take away barriers to students. They said, we still want to accomplish all of our goals and help our students make it to the finish line and make it to college. What do you want to do? And then let us help you do that. And so in conversations and meetings with Achieve Atlanta and APS, we were able to do that and start serving students very quickly so that they didn't receive a lot of gaps in support. Now, as we entered into the fall, I will admit it has been quite a bit different. And why is that? Well, advisors didn't have existing relationships. These are new advisors, some of them. These are new senior students. We had to think about how we were going to get contact information. We had so much of that from in March because advisors had been working with students all year. And so again, collaboration was a big key to our success. We knew that we were starting school a little bit later than normal, so we lost a few weeks there. And we had to really think about, how do we start the school year running? What were the essential things that advisors needed to get started? And so we asked for time in classrooms in general. Can advisors have 10 to 15 minutes just to introduce themselves? They created surveys and they did data collection so that they could collect phone numbers from students and parents. We then employed our text messaging platform that is built in our GRACE system to text both parents and students. We already had this existing campaign with Achieve Atlanta where we call it Family Academy. And that existing partnership, it has scripted texts that are sent throughout the year to parents to help keep them involved and informed about the college access process. And so that also kicked off so that we could get those messages going and still allow advisors to connect with students. Still had some challenges, but we've most recently seen those addressed, honestly, again, because of the commitment of the school district. So we shared that we were still having some challenges with connection. We then started having school-based meetings at all of the high schools in APS with representatives from Achieve Atlanta, from CAC, from One Goal, another college access partner. And we sat down at the table to strategize how we were going to get the year started because we did not want our students to miss out. And so it's not without challenges. I do not want to say that at all. But what I have seen, particularly in Atlanta, is how collaboration helps us mitigate some of those challenges to make sure that students are served.
Yeah, I think that's so insightful, Yarbrah, just the ability to pivot, to use what you had in terms of having the virtual program, be adaptable and really be strategic in where you spend your time, how you use the resources. And, you know, I think that partnership point is so powerful because when we all kind of work together and think strategically and pool resource, you can create so many more opportunities. Well, Tina, kind of building off of that, I was wondering, kind of share, you know, what's it been like for Achieve Atlanta in terms of kind of the range of student supports that y'all offer? I know there's the scholarship and then of course the advising. And I was wondering if you could talk too about some of your scholars that are in, you know, post-secondary now. What has their experience been like so far as they're kind of transitioning through all of this?
Yeah. I think that there's no way that any one organization could address this problem and this crisis that we're in. And so the collaboration is key. And we've seen that at the post-secondary level as well. So once students at APS apply and get the Achieve Atlanta scholarship, they become Achieve Atlanta scholars, and we stay with them once they enroll in post-secondary until they finish. And that is where we leverage our partnerships with our colleges and universities and with organizations like Beyond 12 and EduTech, who provide this social emotional coaching to students once they're on a college campus. We have continued to do that work. So our partnerships with colleges and universities and student advisors, student success teams at those campuses, they're continuing to work with Achieve Atlanta scholars on their campus. We continue to set targets on all our leading indicators and push forward on meeting those targets. Same with our nonprofit partners. What's happened though is, and this is for everyone, the work has just gotten harder and more complex. We have over 2,000 scholars that are studying at over 200 colleges and universities. And every single one of those campuses has a different model. So some are completely virtual, some students are on campus, some are doing a hybrid approach. And so we've had to really figure out, like, how do we serve all these students and work with our partners to make sure that students are getting the supports that they need. Now, most of our students are within the university system of Georgia. And so that's to our benefit, because we can work with our USG partners and hear about what the university system is doing across the board to then think about how we make connections with students. But one of the big things that has happened over the pandemic is that the issues that our students face have just compounded. So our students have always faced financial issues. They are now facing greater financial issues because in many instances, our students are the only earners in their households. Parents have lost jobs. Low-wage workers have been hit especially hard during this pandemic recession. And so our students are struggling financially. So what we have done is we have instituted 2 programs to assist with that. One is an emergency grant program where we provide micro grants to students who are facing a financial emergency. And it's a quick application, quick turnaround to help a student, really just not be in crisis so that they can continue to study in school. The other thing that we have done is we have also implemented a completion grant program for our students who are 1 semester away from finishing, 1 year away from finishing, and have run out of funds. And so we have to have that flexible model in addition to the scholarship program to be able to meet students' financial needs once they're in college. The other thing we have done is we have relied heavily on peer support. So in addition to our partners, we also have Achieve Atlanta ambassadors, and these are upper class students at their campus who are Achieve Atlanta scholars who have already gone through the transition to college. They're a little bit more seasoned. They know the landscape, and they are now reaching out to incoming students, to the incoming cohorts of Achieve Atlanta scholars, and setting up virtual sessions, get-together study sessions. And that peer support has been incredibly important during this time to help foster a community and just help students feel like they can talk to somebody. We've also implemented what we call Kushikamana circles, where students can call in and talk to each other and talk to people at Achieve Atlanta about what's going on and get some support doing that. But the mental and behavioral health issues have just skyrocketed. And so the last thing that we've done is that we have actually partnered with an organization that is providing mental health services to students. Students can get up to 6 sessions free with a mental health provider. They call a number, very quickly they're connected to a licensed professional, and they can talk through some of their mental health issues. These are all things actually that students needed before the pandemic. We just didn't have the resources or the opportunity to do this for students. And what COVID has done is just shone a light on the things that students need, and in some ways allowed us, given us permission to do these things that we knew students needed all along, but especially need during this time.
Yeah, Tina, that's incredible. I think you're so right. Everything that we knew was an issue has just been compounded to a point that we know that we can't, not put it as a top priority now. But I kind of wanted just to unpack, what you shared a little bit more. We knew that applying, enrolling, persisting, and completing a degree was really hard before COVID. And I think, to your point, it's just gotten harder for so many families. I know you shared some of those new needs, but are there any other kind of new needs that you're seeing now that maybe weren't present or weren't apparent before COVID that have just been enlightened or gotten larger? And Yarbrah too, if there are new needs that you see for students applying and enrolling and completing degrees for students and families.
Yarbrah, do you want to start on the access side, and then I can go from there?
Sure. I just want to echo what Tina just said a few minutes ago. I don't know that we have as many new needs. I think these were always needs, and I think they've just been amplified during this time. One of the things I will say, though, that is a need that I think a lot of people could help with at a lot of our universities, both in-state and out-of-state, is really to help with clear guidance, clear, easy to understand guidance about how to navigate the application and financial aid process at their universities. We have always had the challenge that all of our institutions are doing this a little bit different. But other challenges have been things like websites that aren't easy to navigate, forms that aren't available and clear, having access to individuals who will answer the phone to answer questions or return emails in a timely manner. Even when students have advisors to provide support, if they can't connect with someone to help with that translation, there's usually a gap in understanding. And one of the things that's been happening, particularly on the access side right now, is that, and I always say this, everybody with a degree kind of believes they could be a college advisor, right? So like they have accomplished getting to college and getting through it and getting a degree, and they're giving advice. And I have seen very interesting things on social media about students just foregoing education, or what types of schools they should opt for, or what they should invest money in instead of education. And we're combating that in an atmosphere where there is already fear about college, in an atmosphere where there's fear about health and finance. And then we're trying to disentangle that, and it's also difficult when we don't have very clear guidance at institutions, right? So it becomes this maze that becomes even more difficult and discouraging for students, and difficult and discouraging for people who are helping them. Now, advisors have a lot more time to sit on the phone and to email, but imagine schools that do not have additional supports, and counselors are stretched and teachers are stretched. What are those students doing? I would also say these financial hurdles, right? We've talked about this quite a bit at the chamber, just about what are some of those small challenges that already present themselves as hurdles. Some of those will be how to get fee waivers for things like commitment deposits and housing deposits and things of that nature. How do we make this easier and the easiest way we can during this environment to say to students, we really want you here, right? We really want you here. And some of that could simply be shifting when the deposits are due to students, rather than hitting them in the pockets for $300 to $500, in some places more than that, dollars, in order to make commitments to institutions. And so I'd really say that the desire for college hasn't waned with students. There's fear. The fear has increased around uncertainty. But what they want us to be able to do is to promise them that things will be back to normal, to promise them that everything will be, kind of smooth sailing. It never really was smooth sailing, right? And this has amplified some of those holes and gaps that have existed. But what we really need is a conscious effort by those on the post-secondary side to say, we want to make this process as easy, transparent as possible. We want to streamline and hopefully connect at a better level with our secondary education, spaces, in order to make this a more seamless transition for students.
Yeah, I'll underscore everything that Yarbrah just said. And I think just to, put a fine point on that, colleges and universities have had to become experts in, they were already experts in operations, but they've had to completely revamp all of their operations and customer service, because you've got your clientele are 18, 19-year-olds who are trying to figure out how to enroll for classes, pay deposits, figure out housing, get in touch with an advisor, all on Zoom, and we're all learning Zoom at the same time. So these are very complex operational and administrative things that make a huge difference in then helping students be able to focus on the thing they're supposed to focus on, which is their academics. So this is a problem, that we're seeing. A couple of things that we're seeing is, so we know that COVID impacted college enrollment nationally. So the National Student Clearinghouse released recently sort of its preliminary set of numbers analyzing student enrollment across the country. And what they found was that first-time college enrollment was down by about 16% across the country. We were also, Achieve Atlanta Scholars enrollment was down, but it was only down 7%. And so while we don't want it to be down at all, we were able to mitigate a lot of that drop because of partnerships like we have with the College Advising Corps and with APS. So, we're working to get those numbers back up to where they were, because we cannot let up. If anything, college enrollment has become even more important during this time. So, but what did we see with that drop in enrollment? What our drop in enrollment showed was that the students where the enrollment was the lowest was in our 2-year and technical colleges. So our 4-year enrollment has actually gone up, and our 2-year and technical college enrollment has decreased almost by about 20%. That's the same across the country. we don't know why. We have some hypotheses around that. And, some of it is that oftentimes our students who are going to 2-year and technical colleges have other sort of issues that are getting in the way of them going to school, whether it's academic strength or finances. But the other thing that happened, and it will be really interesting to see, how this plays out, is that because of the crisis in the university system of Georgia, many schools did not require the entrance scores to be able to access a USG school. And so what we're doing is looking at the data as how many of our students were actually able to go to a 4-year school because of that sort of test optional situation that happened after COVID. And then how do those students do once they're on the campus? And the research shows that the more that you can give lower income and middle income students access to 4-year institutions or to more selective institutions, the higher their mobility is across the board. So we've got this really interesting scenario now where we're going to be able to look at the data and see what happens when you actually allow more students to enroll in 4-year institutions across the state of Georgia. The other thing I will say is what Yarbrah is talking about, which is there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of fatigue. And the longer that we continue in this situation where students are not able to go on a campus, form relationships with students, with advisors, with faculty, we're very, very worried about the ability of our students to persist in this scenario. And so we're really looking at how do we continue to build those supports in the situation that our students have to continue to study remotely, and because there's just lots of implications to that happening.
I think that's so right. And two, Tina, all the supports y'all have implemented from a mental health perspective and a, behavioral to help students. I think we've all felt, so much more isolated than we ever did before. And I can't imagine what that's like for so many students that are facing new financial challenges, being the sole breadwinner in their family. All of these challenges become more intimidating and harder, especially when you're trying to reach folks and navigate the uncertainty. But Tina, I loved your point about using that opportunity to kind of test what it looks like when there are reduced barriers. I think that's a huge opportunity to demonstrate to leaders and individuals that when you do reduce these barriers, kids can be, just as successful, but we just need to kind of figure out what's that process and how do we make it simpler, clearer, more direct for kids to access. But kind of, to that point, this is something that we've really been working on from the Chamber's perspective. But, USG's put the Complete College Georgia goal, by 2025, 60% of jobs in Georgia will require some kind of post-secondary education, whether that's TCSG degree, certificate, or a USG degree. And, we knew that we needed to enroll non-traditional students, that kids, first generation low-income minority students that weren't enrolling before COVID. And now, of course, we're seeing, less students enroll. It leaves this huge question of what does this look like in the long term? And I think we're all hopeful that we can get back to normal soon. But are y'all seeing trends kind of with your students and, the different places that how this might impact our workforce in the long term and our ability to grow skilled talent in the state?
Yeah, so far our numbers are holding steady. And so one thing I'm really proud of is that we have targets around persistence, year-to-year persistence and semester-to-semester persistence for all of our students. And we actually hit those targets for fall enrollment. So we're really excited that we were able to hold on to our students through this, through this pandemic crisis. We are very concerned about our ability to continue to do that semester over semester as this continues. And so we're spending a lot of time right now reaching out to students, doing case management meetings with our college partners, with coaches, to see what it is that we can do to continue to support students so that they stay enrolled. Because the statistics show that if students stop out, if they stop going to college, only about 13% of those students nationally will ever re-enroll in college. And then the data shows that of those that re-enroll, that those who re-enroll, very few of them actually end up completing. So if we lose them, we are going to have a really hard time getting them back and then graduating them so that they can have the productive lives that they need and that they deserve, and our state has this educated workforce. So this is an opportunity to double down on these efforts to keep students in school once they're in school, but also to get students back. And so we're also testing with our partners some pilots around students who have stopped out, but we still have their information. We know who they were. They were Achieve Atlanta scholars, trying to get them back re-enrolled, which Yarbrah will tell you is a mighty feat. Like once you stop and you're trying to get back into school with all of your credits, it's very complicated. And this is where the university system, where college administrators can make this process easier. Because if we don't get these students back, we will not hit our workforce targets. And that goes across the board, whether it's a 2-year technical, 4-year degree.
I think Tina's spot on. The only thing I'll add is really, as it relates to this transition in the summer between graduation and enrollment. And so because College Advising Corps is largely about the access side of things, I'll say what I've seen emerge is this concept of a gap year. Now that's not new, right? A lot of higher income students, upper middle class students have had gap years where they are internship experiences, they travel, they do all of these they do all of these programs to build skills and to prepare them for the workforce. What's happened though, however, is because this has been more in our kind of national lexicon, is that we believe that everyone has the same access to what this gap year concept really is, right? And our low income students, our first generation students are often not networked to have gap year experiences that are as meaty and full and provide them all of these opportunities. They don't have access to systems and computers and things over the summer to do things remotely. And so people are talking about gap years, students then begin to talk about them, but ultimately what that means is I don't enroll, right? Because to have an actual fulfilling gap year, you actually have to be connected to some type of program, experience, internship, travel, something. Our students didn't have that. And because of COVID, that's even less likely. And so many of them have to work because that's what they were doing even before COVID. And so what that becomes is a dependable stream of income to families and to households. And then how do we stop that when we don't yet know if where the end is and where the end will be? And so I'm very concerned about our students who, and how we talk about gap years in general. And we want to be really, that's something I would just encourage everyone on this phone call, is to be particular with your words when you're talking to students, because everyone doesn't have that same kind of access. Similarly, I think this is an opportunity for our post-secondary partners who have summer bridge programs, who maybe weren't able to deploy them this past year, to really think about how they can do outreach to students to keep them engaged over the summer. We need to make that seamless connection with students so that they can get invested in going to college, right? And they can get invested to their campuses, they can get connected to resources, similar resources as Tina's describing. One of the things I think is so amazing about what Achieve Atlanta is doing is when you think about high school students, they get a lot of wraparound services, and those services come to them. People seek them out. We follow them down the hallway. We bring social emotional support in their classrooms. It's intrusive, right? It comes in, the support comes to them. Then all of a sudden, they graduate, and then they have to figure out this maze, right? And like some of us go like, okay, that's a part of the college experience. And sure, when you're walking around campus, when you're on the bus, you go figure it out, you have people to talk to. When you are sitting in your bedroom and you have siblings and your grandmom and mom, it's multi-generational household, you got to go to work, you got 45 minutes to figure something out, and you're trying to you miss a Zoom call, you do something else. I mean, think about how frustrating navigating that can be. And so I know it's not the typical way we do business in post-secondary, and I say that as somebody that was on the higher education side for many years, because we want to grow our students and we want to help them develop. But we can't take them from one extreme to the other and think that they're going to succeed. So if we really want them to succeed, how can we change what we do a little bit at the post-secondary side to reach out to those students, to help pull them along, right? Things are going to be a little bit different for the next couple of years. We're going to have to think about it differently. And one of the things that students will need is to know that they'll be supported at the next level.
No, I think Yarbrah and Tina, y'all's points are so spot on. And, we've seen that with Georgia State's Panther grant. the Georgia State identifies that these students are students in good standing, but they have a, financial, credit on their account that would prevent them from an opportunity to continue on in their classes and stop out and then, potentially drop out of higher education forever. And so they take that proactive step. And I think too, y'all have made the point that, so many first generation low income students have kind of this different, experience and may not have the kind of exposure to what a gap year looks like or how to get internships. And we need to think differently if we're going to be able to expand our skilled talent pipeline, because this is a lost economic opportunity for the state. If we've invested so much through public education as well as the Hope Scholarship, we need to make sure that these students are successful, because it's our future workforce. If we don't make the right investments now, it's something that we'll never be able to grow and really support, economic mobility and strong communities across our state, which is something that I know y'all are incredibly passionate about and really on the front lines doing that work. And we're so grateful for all y'all do. I wanted to talk too, I know that we've seen, too, in some reports with low income students are, enrolling at a lower rate with COVID. There's been some reports and some data that's come out. But are y'all, I know, Yarbrah, you mentioned that things are going to be different for the next couple of years. How long are y'all thinking about what this looks like? Are we thinking, high schoolers, your freshman year of high school, sophomore years? What do y'all expect the trends to look like for some of y'all students that are continuing to navigate applying, enrolling in higher education? What could we, what factors do we need to be mindful of?
I was going to say, I think like everybody else, we don't really know what's going to happen. And so what is our position? Our position is that we know what should happen. We know what the numbers are. We know what the data is. And I'll just give you some, just a couple of things that I think about a lot is that when you think about the recession and the economic impact of COVID, a lot of the data shows, and if you're a fan of Raj Chetty's work and the Opportunity Project, that the recession has pretty much ended for high wage workers. Like they're okay, right? But job losses persist for low wage workers. When you also look at where is employment down, low income employment is actually down in affluent areas because affluent folks are staying at home. They're not going to their restaurants. They're not going down, in some places, bars are closed. And folks are staying home, and they can stay home. They can stay, they can make their meals at home. They can entertain at home. But those folks that are doing the service industry jobs or those low wage worker jobs in their neighborhoods are losing income. And so who's ridden out this pandemic in a sort of in a better way? I mean, we're all suffering, but who's surviving? It's folks who have those degrees and who have those high wage jobs. So what do we say? It's more important than ever that we're giving our students access to those jobs. And so we're going to continue to set our targets where they need to be, and then think about like, how do we change the work to hit those targets? So we're not giving up. We're not saying like, oh my God, it's over. Like, we're just not gonna be able to do this. And I think that's the attitude and that's the way we all have to come at this problem, because the reality is we just really don't know. We don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know, we've got a pivotal election coming up. We don't know what's going to happen after that. There's no vaccine yet on the market. And so as we continue to sort of live with this uncertainty, we just have to reinforce all of our efforts to hold on to our students and make sure that they have a future. And one thing that I want to say, Danielle, is that a lot of times we talk about like, our low income students, our first generation students don't know how to do this. My son is a sophomore in college, and I have a daughter who's applying to college right now. They don't know how to do this. But what's the difference? They have me, they have my husband, they've got lots of family and mentors, et cetera, who are helping them. But on their own, they could not do this. And so our students, the students we serve, are no different than, my kids. The difference is that they don't have access. They don't have that social capital to help them navigate these really complicated worlds. And so that's the thing that we're trying to do, is provide all of those resources for those students.
Double click to what Tina's saying. I think that I'm typically an optimistic person, right? And I don't want to say this to be pessimistic, but I want us to say this to be realist. I think it will make all of us feel better to have an end in sight and have a date where we can snap our fingers and things go back to a certain way, because that will make everybody comfortable. But the reality is, even if we snap our fingers and go back, you know, the students that we work with weren't doing great before then, right? Like they've needed additional help and support before then. And so what I'd like to think about less is about how long this is going to last, but for us to think about, wow, let's look at the issues that we have and what do we all need to do to change and support all of these students better. And so what I'd like to think about more is exactly the way that the Achieve Atlanta has pivoted, the way that College Advising Corps has pivoted, the way that a lot of high schools and school districts have pivoted. We're going to have to do this and think about this differently. And maybe that's for a year, maybe that's for 3, or maybe thinking about it differently helps all students so that when some of our comforts come back, we're still thinking about the challenges that students with the most, you know, challenged environments, backgrounds we're facing, right? That we don't forget them when we go back to normal traditional comforts. And so that makes me think about, okay, as an advising corps, what did we have to do? We had to think about, okay, well, our model that we love and is most dear to us is working with students. It's seeing students in the hallway. It's being able to follow them in a gym class and say, come here, I need to come talk to you. That is the way we would prefer to be doing this work, right? If I polled all of my advisors, they miss their students, right? They want to be with them, doing fun things with them. They miss collaborating with counselors and teachers in person. That's not what the environment provides. So what have we done? We said, what can we do to make the best out of the situation that we have? Because at the end of the day, no, it's not the way we'd like to do business, but we're still here for the same reason, and that's for the students, right? We're still trying to help students who need this help the most, right? Get from high school to college to graduation to the workforce. And so when we're thinking about that, that means that, okay, it might not be the way that I like to do it, but what extra things do I need to do to try to get as close to that original experience as I was able to provide students, and at the same time, give them the things that they need to succeed. And so my hope is that we're at every level and every step, we're thinking about this. We're thinking about this in colleges when we think about the importance of student affairs support and how those different services and how pulling students together and how community is such a big part of persistence on those campuses. Well, okay, some of them are on campus and some of them aren't. Well, what will we do different? Rather than looking at our clocks and go, well, I can't wait till everybody can come back to campus. Because the reality is that kind of pivot, it might not ever happen and go back to exactly what it was before anyway. And so when we're thinking about this, let's think about the opportunity in that, and then how we can ultimately help more students in that process.
No, I think both of your point, I don't think things will ever get back to normal, what we were. We all have to think differently. And I think that's something we continue to hear from people to, don't waste a crisis. I think this allows us to really think creatively and think innovatively about how to do what we always needed to do. But we maybe didn't have quite the push that we needed before. I know that, Tina, you mentioned the fact that it's so important to have these networks for students and for families that are looking for information, trying to figure out how to fill out the FAFSA. It's confusing. None of it makes sense. It's this incredibly burdensome process. You can't navigate the website. Everything's different. Are y'all seeing really good ways to engage students right now, either through, nonprofits, church groups, other entities that y'all work with, since we are in this place where we have to have distance and space and we can't kind of all be around each other and in close proximity? Are y'all seeing ways to engage students either through text or chatbots, or, I know, Tina, y'all have done the peer groups with, Zooms. Are y'all seeing other options that may be helpful to some of the workforce developers on our call too, that are trying to connect with students and figure out how to keep people engaged?
Sure. So a couple of things, necessity, I guess, is the mother of invention. And then for those of us who are old, the mother of like having to use technology. But like we have now created all these Slack channels, right? So we've created these Slack communities. Our students know how to use them. And we started off, we were like 10, 12 students, you know, and we tried to form communities on Slack. We've got now over 200 students on our Slack channels, and they're talking to each other and they're chatting with each other. They're asking each other questions. They're letting each other know about deadlines. So this is something that, you know, our communications director was like, why don't we do this? She's younger. And, you know, it's like sort of this organic thing that has created these communities. Social media is huge. Our students are on social media probably now more than ever. And so really having people on your teams who understand how to engage with the younger audience on social media, and not just to get them to like look at promotions that you have, but also how can you inspire them? How can you give them useful information? How do you connect them to each other? How do you let them see pictures of like it for employers, you know, what a job at your organization looks like? What does it look like to be somebody who works in your company or on your, on the floor of, you know, I don't know, the auto mechanic shop or, you know, whatever. Like students are looking at these things, and it's a great way to engage students. And then there's just lots of really cool technology, games. It's amazing what's coming out in terms of like, how do you get students together on a Zoom, not just to talk the way we are, but to engage in activities, to do scavenger hunts, etc. So we've seen a lot of really creative things happen, and students are hungry for that connection. And then the other thing I'll say is, and there is still opportunity for some social distanced activities. And I think on the employer side, you know, I think we're going to get to this, but I want to make a push that a lot of times when we talk about employers and how they can connect with students, we talk about exposure. But I really believe, you know, and I may not be popular for saying this, but that is not going to be the silver bullet. You can talk to students about your companies. You can go to schools and talk to parents and tell them how much money kids are going to make. But if they have no real world experience around what you do, that's just going to be a really hard sell. So I would say, and then we've got our college students who right now are trying to figure out what their jobs are going to be after they graduate. So to the extent that employers can offer internships, shadowing opportunities, you know, even just jobs to do administrative things within your company, but for students, especially college students, to start to get that work experience and to be part of your organization and see what that's like. I think that is really where you're going to see like the largest bang for your buck. So I think there's lots of opportunity right now to engage students in that way as well.
I want to like also just echo that. Even before the pandemic, I would always say when it came time for our students to think about technical or trade school, it often wasn't a conversation with students until very late in the school year. And so what does that mean to them when it is presented as the last opportunity to them, rather than one of many robust opportunities for them when they begin thinking about the college process? And so when we're thinking about being more intrusive and connected to schools, one, I try again. I hear a lot when I talk to folks from the technical side and trade schools that like they weren't let in, they didn't have the same kind of relationships. But what I'd encourage you to do is try right now. See if there are opportunities, because again, we're all trying to think about this a little bit differently. How might you be able to form a partnership today? And not just with seniors, right? I know that's what we're thinking about most clearly, but how might you be able to create a relationship with schools or school districts starting at much younger ages, one, right? So that that exposure can happen initially. But I am completely with Tina. What used to make the most impact with our students were when they would have college tours, just like when they would go to UGA, but they would be able to go to, you know, Atlanta Tech, you know, Athens Tech, what, you know, wherever, to be able to go into some of the classrooms to watch people do work. That was the stuff that was most exciting to students. Oh, I get to work with my hands. They enjoy hearing the information, but seeing people that look like them getting to work, doing things, that's what's most inspiring. And if there are opportunities to form some of those connections and to bring students out, whether those are in factories, and I agree with Tina, there are definitely opportunities for social distancing. What can you bring to them in some way that might be, maybe you can't have everybody in your facility. Maybe you can use videos, or you can use Zoom and do live. I mean, there's technology out there that can allow you to introduce them to the kind of work that they could be doing, to pull them in and engage them more about the experience. And so I think there's this opportunity, and I think it benefits our workforce, to think about how we pull students in early, we inform them, we engage them, and then we give them some opportunity to get connected early. Tina's example of if it's even administrative work, even if it is administrative work, right? What is something that they can do? What is a project that they can do that can connect them to business, that can make them feel a part of something, right? And then they're around colleagues who have, whether it's certificates or diplomas or 2-year degrees, they can see a path and kind of see what that future looks like. And I think if we do that more, there'll be a lot more commitment. There'll be earlier commitment, very honestly, for many of these students, because they can visualize what that looks like. It's become more clear. We've done a lot of work around college, so they kind of get that. College is in movies and things of that nature. They have a visual of what that looks like for them. The question is, how do we take a lot of our technical jobs and make that a reality and show them how they could be successful in that and how they can see themselves in that earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. I think making it personal and making it an opportunity that they feel like they can completely take on, I think that's such an important step to really make it seem like a reality and part of their life. Amy, I wanted to see if we had any questions from the chat from folks or things that we wanted to touch on from everybody.
We are. The chat box is starting to get active, and I know Yarbrah has a hard stop at 9:55. So just a couple of things. Kudos on all the work-based learning. Yes, yes, yes. More and more and more of that. So to that point, Melvin with Gwinnett Tech just mentioned that they host a career work day for students to see firsthand what working in a specific work area is all about. And it has been very successful for them. So thank you, Melvin. And kind of similar to that point, Dorma Davis is asking what efforts are in place on the higher ed side in creating a clear, easy, and understandable process. And is this a priority that allows for contribution, for suggestions, collaborative efforts with partners, that is a concerted ongoing effort with an end goal? Whether it not just limited to work-based learning, but in the whole getting in to college process.
Yeah, so I think one thing I would say to any folks in that sector who are trying to recruit students, okay, the idea that you go and talk to students and do a presentation and then wait for them to come, you're going to be waiting a really long time. Or the idea that if you host a session at your school and then wait for students to come, you're going to be waiting a really long time. So again, if you know any 16, 17-year-old in your life, think about how you get them to do things. They're all the same, right? So you've got to reach out multiple times. You've got to get a friend you've got to provide transportation. You've got to provide incentives, right? This is good for you. You're going to eat your vegetables and then you can use my car. Like, this is like, if you're a parent, you understand that it's not just a logical thing. Like, oh, if we give them all this great information, they will come and then they'll sign up. So you've got to be really creative, and you've got to, like Yarbrah said, like, don't give up. You've got to pull out all the stops and really engaging students in thinking about what is the mind of a teenager, how do they process information, how do they get to events, how do they engage, and really think about it in that way so that students can get the exposure that they need. And then from there, once you've got them, then you've got to really, walk them through the process and make it as simple as possible for them to engage.
Thank you, Tina. Yes, and as a mother of a teenage daughter, the accountability piece is just as much work on me as it is. It can be exhausting. So
exactly.
Chris Motor is asking, how do students initially engage with the college advising course and Achieve Atlanta?
Well, if we're in your school, we come to you. I mean, that's the thing. We are partnered with, in Georgia right now, we are at 25 different high schools, excuse me, across the state, but we're primarily in Atlanta Public Schools. We're also in Gwinnett, in Athens, in Rockdale, in Henry County. So the first thing is partnership, right? So if there is a partnership that exists already between College Advising Corps and a high school, then the Advising Corps, their responsibility is to go out and to meet all students. So while we focused on first gen, low income, underrepresented, once placed in a school, advisors have responsibility for the full caseload of the school. We are trying to go in, help all students achieve their dreams. Getting connected with Advising Corps largely starts at our program level. I mean, you could email me. I'm going to then connect you to one of our programs, either at University of Georgia or Georgia State, to have conversations about what partnership looks like. Is there a cost? Yes, there is, but we're a much lower cost support. Per student, we are under probably $150 cost to be able to, in terms of support when we think about an entire school. And so advisors are there, they're full-time resources. And so having those conversations can absolutely happen. And it's something that we're hopeful for. I would like to say this one thing before, and I'm gonna have to go. I started to have to drop off so early. But one of the things that we're also thinking about as an Advising Corps is like, how will we do things a bit differently as we move forward? And we've always had our virtual side of the house, but most recently we've been exploring, relationships and partnerships with using chatbots and AI. And so this past spring, we entered into a relationship with AdmitHub and the Common App to identify first-gen low-income students who still needed help in the process. Using the AdmitHub chatbot, they were able to do initial outreach to students to say, hey, do you still need help? What kind of questions do you have? Now, using artificial intelligence, the chatbot can answer most of the questions, right? However, there are always complications for students. And so ultimately they would hit a line when the question would get too complicated and they needed to reach out to a person. We had advisors staffing basically like email banks to be able to respond to students through text, right? So they used their email, but it came to students through text. And so we were able to reach so many students in March that we've actually expanded that relationship. And this fall, our goal is to reach nearly 400,000 students using this AdmitHub Common App partnership. And so it's not just texting. If a student has an even more complicated issue, then we can connect that advisor to students via phone or via a Zoom chat, video in some way to have additional support. We're also piloting this in Texas. So the Texas Higher Education Board is piloting a project with AdmitHub and College Advising Corps, where they've hired advisors, again, to provide that human support after there's outreach. And so they're targeting, I believe it's around 80,000 students, in particular, 90,000 students in particular, to receive these texts that are going out. They will have the opportunity to engage and get their quick answers through AdmitHub. But if they're having issues that need a human touch, there'll be a group of advisors that will be able to respond to them virtually. And so we're looking at how we can reach students. Of course, again, our core model is always going to be that advisor connected directly to a school, but we don't reach everyone that way. Everyone can't afford an advisor. Everyone can't get an advisor. We're not in every single state. So we're thinking about how we might be able to offer that opportunity to more students. And so what I encourage people to think about is doing things a little bit different. This isn't the way we necessarily saw ourselves going. Last year we were looking at chatbots. I mean, a lot of groups have probably had this conversation, but we saw the success in doing it. And that's what I want to encourage us all to do. Think innovatively, think creatively, talk to young people, talk to them. I think that example was so good that Tina gave. Like 16 and 17, we can want it to be a different way, but it's not going to be that way, right? So what do we need to do to have success? If we need them to be successful, right? It's not just an investment, it's altruistic, of course, but we also need them for all of us. We're getting older, right? We need students to succeed for themselves and for all of the rest of us so that we have a really promising Georgia. And so how can we think about that differently? What can we explore for success in the future? So thank you. It was great speaking to all of you today. Thank you so much, Tina. Got to drop off, guys, but it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Yarbrah.
So I hate that Yarbrah didn't get to hear this, but Dr. Ken Zeff has, put in the chat box that you are both fabulous and treasures to Atlanta. So we'll convey that to her later. But he did have a question about high schools are managing so much right now, and sounds like APS is prioritizing this post-sec transition work. How have you been able to ensure this work is at the top of their priority list? And then I do have one other question that we definitely need to ask, and that will probably close us out.
Sure. So thank you for that question. This has been a relationship that we have built over the last 5 years. And if this had happened in our first year of working with APS, you know, the situation wouldn't have been the same. But over the last 5 years, what we have done, and this is what our role is at Achieve Atlanta, is to think about how do we help facilitate a collaborative process? How do we bring the folks from the district, the folks from the provider side, how do we bring resources to the table and help facilitate this collaboration, get around a common set of goals and targets that we're all holding ourselves accountable to meet, and then like implement together and hold ourselves accountable. And over the last 5 years, we have built a system at APS, and APS has been entirely open and willing to do this and has dedicated resources to the extent that now we have college access metrics for the district, and principals are holding their teams accountable to these metrics. So it's things like FAFSA completion. It's things like how many students are meeting with their college advisors every semester. We have targets for how many students are applying to 3 or more colleges their senior year. And then we have targets around how many students are applying for the Achieve Atlanta Scholarship. With the APS data team, CAC's data team, and our data team, we've created dashboards, we've created protocols for collecting the data, and monthly we have these dashboards that are saying, how are we doing to track this progress? So it's been a change effort that has gone on over the last couple of years, but there is a culture now at APS around we are going to prioritize what our students do after they graduate from high school and leave us. And we're going to like work systematically to hit those targets and hold ourselves accountable. We have a new superintendent in the district now, and leadership matters. And one of the things that we're so happy is that the new superintendent, Dr. Herring, has continued the emphasis on this body of work. And so we can continue the work with the folks that we know at the school level and at the district level to execute the way we've been doing over the last couple of years. And so I think like part of it is, you know, there's the make it easy, facilitate. It's not easy, but, you know, it sort of like bring everybody around the table, facilitate, get the buy-in. And then you start to see this culture shift where this is a priority. We've worked too hard to establish this at the district, and we don't want to lose ground.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important work. And you're right. It is not a short game, right? It is a long game that will continue to work. One last question. Kia Dodd, she loves Achieve Atlanta and loves that you've implemented the health support services for its scholars in the midst of this pandemic. What feedback have you received from them about these services? And is this a resource you will continue to implement?
Yeah, so what we've done is, and I've got somebody on my team, our VP of College Success is a PhD in organizational psychology. She's a coach, she's a professor, and this is her expertise, this body of work. And so very early on, she's like, we're gonna have to provide some services. And so we partnered with an organization that's Student Assistance Program. And it's a really interesting model because you sort of think about your universe of students and how many students could potentially access this. And there's a cost, there's sort of a cost to implement this program. It's not that much, you know, in the grand scheme of things, when you think about the loss of revenue from students dropping out of college, et cetera. And then we make these services available to students. So, you know, just to give you a ballpark, I think we're providing this service to over 2,000 students, and it's costing us about $20,000 a year to do. And so with that service, students can call in, they can talk to a licensed professional, and we've actually worked it out so that it's just student and the family can call in. So every month, we get a dashboard from this provider of how many students have accessed the service, and then what are students asking about? What are the main issues that they're facing? So then we're able to gather, and it's all confidential, so it's all aggregated, but we're able to gather data around like, what are the issues that our students are seeing? Like I said before, you can provide the service, but it doesn't mean everyone's gonna rush through the door to access it. So one of the things we're doing now is, how do we promote this? How do we get our peer advisors to tell students about this? How do we get our coaches to know about this service? How do we get students to feel like it's okay to say, I have an issue that I'm struggling with and I need to reach out to somebody? So now we're doing the efforts around like actually getting usage up for this service. And, you know, we're getting good feedback from our students who are using it, from the providers, and we'd love to continue to offer this for our scholars into the future.
Tina, I wanted to again say thank you, just for all the work that Chief Atlanta's doing, College Advising Corps too with Yarbrah, but, really how y'all have been able to, be so strategic and data driven and making sure that you're making the right investments in the short and long term to support post-secondary completion for students in APS. I know it's going to pay such dividends, and we're so grateful for everything that y'all do. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I know that y'all enjoyed the conversation with Tina and Yarbrah as much as we did. Look forward to our next Max Minutes, and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Thank you again, Tina and Yarbrah. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you guys for elevating this issue. Anytime you want to talk post-sec, let us know.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you.